So the coming days could be very crucial for Kenya in terms of the direction that Athletics Kenya, the National Athletics Federation, is likely to go. As you're aware, there has been a constitutional injunction in court, petition number 499 of 2016, which was filed by, among others, retired Kenyan athlete Moses Tanuya and others, seeking a couple of prayers before the court. This matter is in court, so we are not going to discuss matters that are pending in court for obvious reasons. But suffice to say that it has been such a long time that Athletics Kenya has not held elections to elect new leaders. Ever since Isaiah Kiplagat passed away a few years ago, and the acting president at the moment, Jackson Tuwei, was the vice chair of this federation for a long time. And the federation has been stopped from holding elections until the matters that are before court are fully determined. So we are likely to have a situation where this matter comes up for determination. Final judgment we expect in the coming days, during which period a lot has happened. This whole matter just would take people back to 2015 when Kenyan athletes laid siege at the gates of Athletics Kenya, complaining that officials therein at the time were enhancing the doping menace. That officials, some of whom were banned, were accused of corruption, were accused of facilitating doping within the circle there, and some were even, sanctioned for financial malpractice in terms of, stealing money, sponsorship money that was given by Nike. So the former president, Isaiah Kiplagat, has been dead for years. But then now, the current generation of leaders or the current leadership cannot hold elections which have been pending for almost 8 years. So many people are tired, asking when is this marathon going to come to an end? Because everybody is tired. There is a clamor, there is agitation for new leadership at Athletics Kenya. There are people calling for changes, structural changes at Athletics Kenya. Changes that will make them compliant with the Kenyan Sports Act of 2013, changes that would make them more receptive to athletes and the welfare of athletes, changes that will gear towards realization, long-term aspiration and realization of transparency and accountability in there. Thousands of dollars donated to Athletics Kenya by different corporates in terms of sponsorship money, in terms of training and so many other things. People want to see how much money has been used over the years, and the sponsorship money that has been given, including grants from World Athletics. Kenyans would want to see how that has been used or utilized for many years. Athletes have always complained that Athletics Kenya is not doing anything for them, that in there, the officials, in fact, as of this point, who are accused of theft, who are accused of double dealing, who are accused of conflict of interest, massive conflict of interest. We have officials at the moment in Athletics Kenya who are acting as agents of athletics agents for different organizations. We have specific officials within Athletics Kenya who are double agents for various athletics houses, so to speak, management houses. As you know, these athletics managers and these athletics agents are supposed to be regulated by Athletics Kenya, but some officials therein are actually agents by their own right, by their own, in their own capacity there. Someone is holding a public office, but then again, is an agent for a foreign-based organization that manages Kenyan athletes. So these are kind of issues that people want an end to. The clamor for change at Athletics Kenya must also unearth some agents and officials there who are in fact facilitating the doping menace in Kenya. Officials who are taking money to cover up doping results among the Kenyan athletes while acting as officials of Athletics Kenya. Officials who have been accused of embezzling money meant for the athletes. Officials who are being accused of not remitting money owed to athletes from agencies or from winnings abroad. We have hundreds of Kenyan athletes who do not want to come forward and just speak about their case, but they keep telling us about certain individuals within Athletics Kenya who are yet to remit money that is owed to the athletes. These cases are there, and in fact, there are calls to the Athletics Integrity Unit to come hard on such officials, to probe such officials, and to save the Kenyan athletes from this kind of torture, from this kind of corruption, from this kind of integrity issues within Athletics Kenya. We have athletes whose savings, whose lifetime of money and earnings have been taken away by some of these officials. It is time, people are saying, that these officials must be held to account. We have cases of athletes who say, we won this race 10 years ago, we won this race 5 years ago. Now I should be getting to hear from my manager or from the agency, athletics agency, about how much money I made. If I made $10,000, for instance, one athlete told me, my manager is supposed to take 15%, the coach is supposed to take 10%, so that's 25%. The agency that manages this athlete, according to the contract that they have, is also entitled to a certain percentage of that earning for administrative purposes. And then the rest of the money ought to be remitted directly to the athlete's account. But these officials, the athletes tell me, these officials withhold this money. They tell the athletes, these race organizers have not paid this money, that this and so race organizer has not remitted the money. But in the meantime, I can give you $100 for you to continue, living your life as we chase the money. One athlete told me he's owed so much money that he keeps going to certain officials within Athletics Kenya for handout. Yet he's owed the money. He won a race somewhere in Europe. He won a race somewhere in Asia. He won a race somewhere in the Middle East. He won a race somewhere in North America and South America. But he has not yet been given his money in full, what is duly, owed to him. So what happens is that this official gives him a handout every so often. When he runs out of money, he runs to this official for a handout. He said, could you follow up? Could you? And this official said, okay, now, well, I've not heard from them, but you know what? Here is 20,000 Kenya shillings. They should, have you, take care of you for 2 months or a whole month. And then this athlete, because they fear that this is a very powerful individuals, these are very powerful individuals within the athletic circle in Kenya. This athlete just keeps quiet. This athlete tells me these particular individuals have authority over them. Of course, by virtue of being in the federation. They also have influence over investigative agencies, and I'm talking about the Director of Criminal Investigation, the DCI. I'm talking about the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, where some of these athletes are afraid of reporting for fear of reprisal, for fear of being ejected from the Kenyan team, for fear of missing out on future opportunities presented by, being an elite level athlete and representing a chance to represent your country. So what happens is that these athletes, most of whom, come from Rift Valley, they tell us they've opted for, resolution amongst themselves. They say this is, it's a homegrown matter. We're just going to discuss it as a people from the area, and that's it. They keep telling me, no, we don't want to speak because some of these people belong to the Kenya Defense Forces. Some of these people belong to the Kenya Police. Some of them belong to the Kenya Prison Service. Some of them belong to the Administration Police Service. Some of them belong to the National Youth Service. Some of them run for institutional teams, the universities, the corporates and stuff. And as such, they are afraid of official reprisal and victimization from their employers, because they are saying, these people hang out with our bosses. These people hang out with the heads of these organizations that are affiliates of Athletics Kenya. For instance, they will tell me that these people are friends of those in the military where I work. So I am absolutely never going to raise my voice against some of these people, because my boss will know about it. And in some instances, one athlete told me he was told to write a complaint. The moment that complaint letter was written to Athletics Kenya, it was received by this official. And this official shared with one of the people who is within the discipline forces. And this athlete was nearly punished for that. And he said, I know, because I got phone calls from people. I got emissaries, people sent to me to come and warn me as to my conduct and attempts to ruin the name of these particular officials. So these are some of the things that are happening at the moment with Athletics Kenya. We have officials in there that have ripped the athletes dry. They have eaten where they have not sowed. They have stolen money meant for the athletes. These officials owe athletes millions of Kenyan shillings, thousands of dollars, and not just this year, not just last year. It has been years in the making. The impunity in there is such that these athletes prefer to get money in small bits as if they are receiving pension at the end of the month, if only to shield themselves and get an opportunity, to continue running for Kenya. Some have completely given up on this money. I know of an athlete who said, I have given up. There is no way I'm going to get this money. This man is powerful. This man has connections. This man is dangerous. He's threatened people with litigation. He's threatened people with specified and unspecified consequences. And as a result, athletes are keeping quiet. Some athletes are not even so sure whether they need to write to Athletics Integrity Unit to come and probe these officials at Athletics Kenya, because they say this man will know about it and my results, the doping results, could be tampered with. One athlete told me this person works with corrupt doping control officers at the Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya to try and victimize them, so to speak. These allegations, that they say, that they work with some corrupt doping control officers at the Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya to try and warn the athletes as to their conduct when they make a complaint. That sometimes, because some of these athletes also, most of them are ignorant, most of them really are not educated to a level where they can take matters into their own hands. Most of the time they depend on support, from friends and family and stuff like that. And in instances, for example, on legal matters, most of them are really ignorant on it. So one athlete told me, this person came to me, took money from me, and then once I did not pay that amount that was required, I had my samples, swapped. And as a result, I'm out. I'm being, accused of doping at this particular point. And this is not just an official within Athletics Kenya. There are several of them who work from the regions, from the branches, all the way up. It's a rotten system that must be dismantled. One athlete told me, so what would the Athletics Integrity Unit do? They know about these cases. They know about these particular officials. The head of, Athletics Integrity Unit was in Kenya a few months ago, met a couple of athletes. These officials were there. How were the athletes supposed to complain? And most of the Kenyan athletes tell me they actually do not know about a discreet way of making a complaint to the Athletics Integrity Unit. And I say, you're going to have to start somewhere. Start speaking out. Don't succumb to fear anymore. The fear must be discarded if you need help. But then I said, so what about when we write to the Athletics Integrity Unit? What will they do? I said, there's nothing they're going to do, because most often than not, they may not even believe us. We are suffering in silence. We are victim of oppression here by people who are weaponizing the fight against doping in Kenyan athletics for monetary gain. And they are saying these people must be removed when the new dispensation of Athletics Kenya is called to order. And if the case that is currently in court is determined and heard and judgment passed, and Athletics Kenya go to polls, some of these athletes are praying that some officials should never in fact even contend for some of these positions. They must not be on the ballot. They must not be cleared by the Ethics and Integrity and Anti-Corruption Commission of Kenya. Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission of Kenya must not clear these guys on account of lack of integrity. Some of these cases are there. Some of these complaints are there. But they are swept under the carpet by the executive of Athletics Kenya. And the athletes do not have voice. Even those that are called athletes representatives within the Athletics Kenya have not done much over the years to assist and to fight for the plight of some of these athletes, most of whom are suffering in silence. And I want people to understand this, that it's not really easy to deal with this kind of matters. It takes quite a lot. If a person who is an athlete in Kenya now owes his fame, owes his employment at the Kenya Defense Forces to a certain official who recommended his employment at the Kenya Defense Forces, at the Kenya Police Service, and then this official asks for money every month or a retainer every month from this athlete, what are they supposed to do? What is an athlete supposed to do? What options are available to this athlete? Because some of them feel that this is extortion. When, for example, as a police officer, you are stationed in Garissa, and I want you to know that when you took the oath of office, you said you could work anywhere in the Republic of Kenya. But then on account of the talent, most of the people within the forces, within the disciplined forces, are usually given a soft landing. For instance, an athlete could be attached to the presidential escort unit, which demands that this person is always on the move with the president. But because he's also an athlete, an elite level athlete who must prepare for competitions abroad, the commanders or the supervisors of these athletes give them a softer way, some sort of a leeway where they are allowed to go out of the station to train for days on end. We've seen that among people who are competing for the Defense Forces, for the Kenya Police, and many other organizations. But that comes with a cost every month or every winning cycle, that when this person gets to win a race, he has to share that money with his bosses. Otherwise then, he could be transferred to the remote part of his country as punishment. And this is why you'd find a lot of Kenyan athletes, back in their rural homes, in Iten, in Nandi, in Eldoret, training there, yet somebody is supposed to be, on traffic duties in Mombasa or Garissa. But then these are some of the arrangements which are corrupt, because what happens, one athlete told me, if I don't make money, I have to look for money, nevertheless, to give this officer who is in the disciplined forces. Otherwise then, I could be recalled to work, or when this person is injured and there is no income stream. These are kind of issues that, predispose some Kenyan athletes to great mental anguish. But they won't speak. They won't, open up, because standing orders within the forces say you have to suck it all in, suck it all up. You can't complain about your boss who is, a major in the Kenya Defense Forces, or a superintendent of police at the Kenya Police Service, a National Police Service. It is unlikely that that athlete would get anywhere. And these are kind of problems that these guys are going through. Now, add this with the weaponization of doping within Athletics Kenya, which is being propagated by some known officials. And then this matter has just become a whole lot of a mess that has been swept under the carpet for years. Some of these officials have also been accused of auctioning the Kenyan official kit, the ceremonial kit that is given to this country by Nike, the shoes, the bib, the running outfit, the ceremonial outfit, the bags, and so many other issues. so many other goods, rather, which are being provided by the sponsor. Most of it never really end up to the athletes. And you can see some of them have complained in the past that they do not have any training material. At the moment, the Kenyan team that is going to the Africa Games in Ghana, some have traveled without even the official kits. Some do not have the ceremonial uniform. And these are problems we are talking about with leadership crisis, not just at Athletics Kenya, but also elsewhere, within these federations. But coming back to Athletics Kenya, these are the problems that are there. There is no transparency. There is no accountability within Athletics Kenya. And this has been a culture that has grown in there for many years. For many, many, many years. Athletics Kenya sees no need to, for example, to disclose why today, for instance, the athletes almost rioted at the Nyayo National Stadium because of rules governing the qualification to the African Games. It is unheard of for Kenyan athletes, to not want to compete. But today, because of leadership challenges within Athletics Kenya, there was no clear communication. There was no accountability and transparency, even when these matters came from government. And these are kind of things we're talking about, that athletes are always on the receiving end in as far as Athletics Kenya is concerned. And today is just a small indication of these problems that we keep talking about. So as Athletics Kenya looks to open a new chapter in the coming days in terms of the resolution of the case that is in court, the constitutional petition that is in court, many people would want to have a new leaf, new injection of blood in there. There are a lot of dopers within Athletics Kenya Executive Committee who are on performance-enhancing substances and who must leave. Corrupt performance-enhancing substances who must leave. There are gatekeepers in there, people whose job is to maintain the status quo. There are people there who are guardians of the old order. There are people there who are the stumbling block towards the realization of new constitutional dispensation and order at Athletics Kenya, in as far as that constitution is concerned, and aligning itself to a competitive athletics body that is ready to meet the emerging challenges of 21st century. The Athletics Kenya at the moment is the Athletics Kenya of the Amateur Athletics AA, the Athletics Amateur Association of Kenya, that was founded in 1992. Nothing much has changed. A lot has happened over this period. Heck, it's only the past few weeks that Kenya has regained a place within the world athletics. Corruption, doping menace, bad leadership, and the rot in Athletics Kenya threw out the leadership that was previously at the council at World Athletics. And for almost 80 years, for more than 80 years, since I think 2016, Kenya did not have any top official sitting either in the cross-country committee, either in the World Championship Committee, or at the council of World Athletics. And this is a country of world champions. This is a country that produces Olympic champions. This is a country of Kelvin Kiptum, the former record holder of marathon. So it was such a big embarrassment that for many years, bad leadership, corruption, and other malpractices was preventing Kenya from having a table at the World Athletics Council. Well, now the president of Athletics Kenya, Jackson Tuwei, is back at the World Athletics. Some sort of a relief for a country that was shamefully being turned into a laughing stock of many countries across the world, saying, look, this is Kenya, the world champions in 2015, the holders of many titles in the Olympics, in Commonwealth, in the cross-country, but yet they do not have official representation at athletics, World Athletics. Instead, they're dealing with daily cases of doping and sanctions of his athlete. It is also time, these athletes tell me, that some officials at Athletics Kenya face the wrath of Athletics Integrity Unit and getting banned for life, getting excluded from athletics for life. They should never be anywhere near the sport of athletics, either as officials or custodians or coaches of any kind. Some of these officials have been accused of, trading minors to countries around the world, to Bahrain, to Qatar, to, Kazakhstan. These officials have been accused, of engaging in corrupt practices with minors, giving minors contracts, and offering them contracts while they're still minors. These are matters that have been discussed before in tribunals and stuff like that. And then you ask yourself, how are these people supposed to be the custodians of the sport while they have been taken and cited for corruption, for malpractices, for integrity issues, and now some of these officials are now facing allegations of, being conduits of doping or enhancing doping. You cannot dope some of these guys because they represent certain management group, because they represent certain stable of athletics, and then you want performance from these athletes. Because the more they win, the more money you get as an athletic agent, as an athletics powerhouse, in terms of a management group that is managing hundreds of Kenyan athletes and hundreds of Ethiopians and Eritreans perhaps. So we've gotten to a situation where some of these officials are actually prescribing dope, have been accused of prescribing dope to athletes so that they can go abroad and win. When they win this money, they share the loot. Because that is a loot. When you win under performance-enhancing substances, it's a loot. It's like robbing a bank. And then they have to come and share with this athlete. Some of these athletes say they use performance-enhancing substances in training, but with the help of a corrupt network, which is in depth, particularly in parts of Rift Valley. That includes the chemists, that includes medical practitioners. They cover up these things, and most of these athletes get busted when they go and compete abroad. Here in Kenya, they try as much as possible to conceal it, by swapping samples, by taking money, by doing all manner of, corrupt practices. But when these athletes go abroad, they get nabbed. I mean, you're wondering why an athlete that we feature here in training for months just appear to be training very well. But then 2 months or, a month after they have competed abroad, they are busted for doping. So you ask yourself, what was happening here? It is the same thing we are talking about. That some of these officials are in fact part of the mess, and it has to take a reference, it will have to take a very honest conversation with everybody at Athletics Kenya, at the doping agency, anti-doping agency of Kenya, to weed out some of these officials. We had in the case of Asbel Kiprop a few years ago, when he was busted for doping, Asbel said that a doping control officer asked him for money, okay, when he was coming to take the sample. And some of these allegations have also resurfaced, that these doping control officers are actually calling athletes in advance of their arrival to take samples. Some of these guys have been accused. There's a Kenyan athlete who was accused of jumping the fence a few months ago when doping control officers came because, he had not been notified, or these are different doping control officers who came. And these are issues we are talking about. So the changes in Athletics Kenya, which are expected and anticipated in the coming days, should not just target these corrupt, and they are very specific. These athletes know them. These athletes know the officials of Athletics Kenya. Some hold, interests across other organizations within the sporting fraternity, who are also affiliated, from the Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya to the National Olympic Committee of Kenya, to other sports like rugby and what have you, who must pave way for, a new slate. Athletics Kenya cannot continue this way, not any longer. Not when athletes are crying for change. There's clamor for new leadership, and especially whichever way the case that is coming up will go, whichever way it will go. Those who will have put this case in court for years will have, depending on how you look at it, won or lost. Won in the sense of they managed to have a process in court for 7-8 years, preventing a lot of nonsense, so to speak, from happening at Athletics Kenya. A lot of looting, a lot of things that, should have happened, impunity and whatnot, for these 7 years. It's taken quite a lot, resources, time, and so many other things to keep it in court, but, so they feel that they have run a marathon of some sort. A legal marathon where they kept this case in court for 7 or 8 years, clamoring and asking the courts to consider their plea, whatever pleas or prayers that they have before the courts. And it has taken them this long to get to this point. So many people say, okay, maybe these are retired athletes and their representative and other minders who wanted better, and they seem to have won in that respect, because they prevented a few people from becoming certain officials within Athletics Kenya. They prevented a coup within Athletics Kenya. They prevented people from assuming roles within Athletics Kenya. Or it gave them time and chance for people's true colors to be seen, and to give people more time for more scandals to self-incriminate themselves. And the evidence is out there. Maybe they wanted these people to continue receiving money and bribes, over the years, so that they build a stronger case if they want to take it to the Athletics Integrity Unit or the Court for Arbitration of Sport, because there are calls to that effect. There are people who also say they lost, is that they strangled the dreams of athletes, officials, and everybody else. It's like they wasted time, everybody's time and money. Athletics Kenya should have reformed itself a long time ago. Some people who are there at the moment should have been there. Some people who are there should have been jailed, maybe, for their role in corruption, as we saw in the case of the Rio 2016 Olympic scandal in Kenya. There are people who say this case was a waste of time. It was a loss of money. It was a loss of time, loss of resources. Athletics Kenya is still in the same place as it were 7, 8 years ago. Whichever way you look at it, when that moment is called, history will have both sides of the divide to consider. And this is what people want, that at the end of the day, we shouldn't have athletes suffering again, because if they need support, and I'm talking about visa support later, it should not be the preserve of one individual within Athletics Kenya to determine whether this athlete would travel abroad or not. It should not be a reserve of 2 people within Athletics Kenya to decide whether this athlete would go abroad or not. It should not be, conflicting interest by people who hold, a conflict of interest because they are officials, yet they're agents at the same time. And this person, is listed to go to London Marathon, belongs to a rival agent, or agency. And this person has to give that letter to the embassy for support. It shouldn't be that. Athlete must be able to be served irrespective of whichever affiliation, whether they belong to Rosa Associate, whether they belong to Global Communication, whether they belong to any group, they should be served unconditionally and equally for as long as they merit it. And there are people who are asking Athletics Kenya to get rid of these officials themselves. Athletics Kenya has very aged officials, very elderly people, and most of whom think they are low in energy, they are low on motivation, they are low on what is happening. They are clueless about what is happening. There are people who feel, in fact, that retired Lieutenant General Jackson Tuwei is not even in charge of Athletics Kenya, that it's other people who are in fact in charge of this federation. He's just the ceremonial head. Is that other people are making decisions on behalf of Lieutenant General Tuwei, that he is helpless, that he is clueless, that he is just a rubber stamp in there, that he does not have the grip of the day-to-day running of Athletics Kenya. The accusations that the Vice President Paul Mutwe is suffering from dementia. He absolutely has no idea most of the time about what is going on. He's aged. He's ran out of steam, and nothing about old people. I'm old myself, I'm growing white hair every single week. But these are kind of things. For a sport that is very fast, for a sport that has a lot of young people, enthusiastic, energetic, there can never be lapse, in terms of management. The management has to be as first and catch up with the athlete. So the older and the aged, leadership at Athletics Kenya, many people feel it's time to retire and hand over power to a younger generation of leaders who are more energetic, who are more focused, and who have better ideas in running this organization than the current crop of people. And the president himself has called on retired athletes to play a better role, to play an active role in sports and management after they have retired from the sport. And these are calls that are being amplified now around with the stakes in Athletics Kenya. They are saying the leadership in there has to be changed. It has to be refreshed, if you will, not necessarily changed. I mean, if delegates feel that they can continue to lead, why not? But they feel there's got to be some bit of refreshment in there in terms of ambitions, in terms of where guys need to go, and just generally. The future of Athletics Kenya is not in the hands of the current crop of leaders. It lies elsewhere. Athletics is a very fast sport. Very fast. It's measured in time, and time is money. You cannot have sleeping bags within Athletics Kenya. People who are clueless, people who are under doctors' watch, leading this organization. You cannot have Joe Bidens in Athletics Kenya, I'm afraid. And I'm just using that as an example that people are clamoring for change. And change should come sooner or later. A lot is at stake. There were calls for Kipchoge Keino, the former president of the National Olympic Committee of Kenya, to pave way at the Olympics house. And he did that, and he left the leadership to Paul Tergat. Paul Tergat is about maybe 50 years, quite still a young man, full of energy and stuff like that. Issues within NOC to be resolved in the fullness of time, or exposed in the fullness of time. But at least in there, people silently had a sigh of relief when Kipchoge Keino left. And they are saying the same should happen at Athletics Kenya, where some people seem to have overstayed their stay there. And there's nothing new they're offering. The sport is stunted, it's not growing. What is growing is the number of Kenyan athletes falling afoul with anti-doping rules every single week. So you have anti-doping rule violations that as many as the combined ages of the people leading Athletics Kenya. And there are those who want an end to that. There are athletes who cannot speak, but they share this with us. They are saying Athletics Kenya must have a new leadership. It must have a new direction, sense of purpose, that they cannot continue like this for many years. So as the case, the constitutional appeal case, that is in court comes up in the coming days, for resolution, hopefully final resolution. There are those who will say, this should be the straw that breaks the camel's back. It's a generational opportunity to get things right. It's a moment in history, a turning point in history of Athletics Kenya, which was founded in 1992, for it to get its act in order, to sweep the house clean, throw away the trash, empty the trash, get some people who are holding everybody back, and chart a way forward. And that time is here, the time is now. And those calls are growing louder and bolder. And as someone said, the fear is gone.